I am not. I am as John. I'm not Carl Marshall, as it says in the in the book. I am just Carl Marshall's Oppo. I am the cabinet support for Carl Marshall. He is the guy who is the driving force behind the economic regeneration of County Durham, and it's just an honour to work for him. But every now and again, and this is absolutely voluntary, I might point out, I get the opportunity to step in for him when he's unable to do things. And a year ago, my very first time I did that in a major capacity was with John at the EV Roadshow in Durham Town Hall. And I came with a talk that had largely been written for me by Maggie. Is Maggie about? By Maggie. And sort of it included this memorable sentence, which I thought was great, but was not my own. It was Maggie's. We are determined to put Durham right at the forefront of the zero carbon transport revolution. Sort of a bold claim. Sort of, looking back on it, somewhat foolhardy. And the three things came out of that meeting. The first one is that after it, everybody came and said, "Oh, John, you must begin to take up this more enthusiastically. Can you represent us?" And the result of that was that we've declared a climate emergency at Durham County Council. And for my sins, I am now the climate change champion of Durham County Council, one of the silliest titles ever given to a human being, most pretentious. And it doesn't mean champion, it means sort of champion in the sense of advocate. And so my job is to carry the can if we fail. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that it has been my absolute privilege to therefore be involved with the low carbon team and sort of to them really sort of deserves all the credit and the praise. It's sort of I just stand there and look decorative. And what they have done, and remember we've got many other areas that we're dealing with other than transport, the energy and their enthusiasm and their knowledge hasn't today been terrifying. I've just been sat listening to these people talking to us, and I've just thought, well, that's stupid and shallow. And I've been going through my own talk. What are you going to say that for? That's don't say that to them. I think, God's sake. Oh, that was wrong. And dearie me, never appear on the same platform as experts. And anyway, but sort of, the experts on the low-carbon team are just wonderful. And what we've done in the last year, and sort of, I'm going to say two things about this, but sort of the first one is that we took part in the Erasmus programme where we employed 4 students for a year to look at our charging structure. They interviewed people about their needs, and it's really been a very, very profitable thing for us. But one of the things they found out that half of the charge points in County Durham didn't work. And so we're busily going and mending them now. And this thing that the capital costs are one thing, but revenue costs are another thing, maintenance and things like that we need to worry about. We have become part of the Innovate UK programme, £250,000 for that, and how exciting, sir. What just a brilliant thing, and so necessary in a place like County Durham where we're mainly terraced housing. So one of my big beefs is that if we're not careful, the whole climate emergency issue is going to become a very middle-class sort of consumer-led kind of thing, where we sort of go and buy sort of local produce in the market, and it's going to exclude huge numbers of people who are sort of... The message is this: the lady who's picking up food from the food bank, she doesn't care that she's carrying it home in a plastic bag. And we need to have, this needs to involve the whole of the population, and sort of, so it's absolutely vital that we hit the terraced streets with this and that we find a solution that works. We are busy electrifying the fleet. That is a major issue, but at least we have now as a rule that if we're not replacing used vehicles with an electric alternative, we have to explain why. that's happening. That's now that has come. So sort of the presumption is in favour of EV. I'm at the moment falling out with everybody about the fact can we change the spec for the mayor's car so we have a mayor's EV. Sort of we have to win that, Joy. Oh, by the way, Joy's somebody important. So that they. We have to win that. Sort of, we cannot be a climate emergency council and the mayor is wandering around in a diesel vehicle. That's sort of, so you send a letter to the chief executive on that for me, will you? We're exploring an EV service station at where I live, down at Forest Park Business Park in Newton Aycliffe, which will be very exciting. I believe one of just 3 in the northeast. If I'm I'm from the Diane Abbott School of Mathematics, and so any of the things I say to you. May be wrong, and I just apologise for it. We're appointed an EV officer, and we've got an EV working group. We've fitted electric hoists to our bin vans. One of the big problems is that when you pass a certain size of vehicle, it is just impossible to afford, or they just can't do the job. And that technology needs developing. Lower down the scale, the technology is there, and sort of we just need to apply it. But the third thing that happened at that was when I said that, John stood up and he said, oh, I've been to many of these events, and I hear councillors talking hot air like we are determined to put Durham right at the forefront. But sort of when John said it, I really believed it. And that, John, changed my life. Because, one, I've always been a bit sort of environmentally and climate change. Secondly, I've been given the responsibility as a job. But what that did was it placed the most onerous personal burden on me to actually deliver. And I thought, you need to be careful about the silly words coming out of your mouth, because now you've committed yourself. And what it's done, I'm sort of autistic, you may have noticed. But the fact is that together with the autism, what John created was this Thunberg-esque monster, a pale, male and stale version of Greta Thunberg, who's stomping around the northeast, shouting angrily at people. And the word I'm shouting is scale, scale. And I'm going to talk about the scale of it. The CO2 emissions from transport in County Durham, about 800,000 tonnes a year. The big difference between that and domestic and business, where they're falling like a stone, is that it's stubborn. It's sticking at that. And it's not moving. And it's very, very worrying if we're going to have a carbon-free transport future. And to give you a view of, if you think how light a gas is, a ton of carbon, CO2, sorry, a ton of CO2. If carbon dioxide didn't just sort of float up into the atmosphere and wreck the climate, if it sort of sunk to the floor and stayed there and couldn't move it, 800,000 tonnes a year would cover the whole of County Durham, every square inch of it, to a depth of 20 centimetres in a year. And that would mean after a decade of this, and remember how long we've been driving cars, after a decade it would be 2 metres high, and we would all suffocate because we couldn't breathe. That is the scale of the problem. Every 10 years we're basically killing ourselves. And this huge thing, 2.5 billion vehicle miles driven in County Durham in 2015. 2.5 billion. And we're talking glibly with respect about replacing all these vehicles with electric vehicles within a time scale. We have 250,000 vehicles in County Durham driving around at this moment. Does anybody care to guess how many of those are electric vehicles? Does anybody know? Is anybody going to embarrass themselves by guessing? I know you're not, because not on your life. 547 in January 2018. Scale! Scottish Power have done a survey, and they say that for transport to be truly carbon neutral, we need 25 million charge points. Now, we don't know when that's going to be, 2050 or 2030. People are shouting at me all the time that it's got to be earlier and earlier and earlier. But we need 25 million charge points, of which they say 2.5 million have to be public. Pro rata, that means we need 17,000 charge points in County Durham. There's a big splash the other day in the newspapers, and that's at NetPark, which is one of our sort of major sort of futuristic sort of state-of-the-art, state of research and science business parks. They put in 2 charge points, and they made a big splash about it, and a lot of very important people said how wonderful it was and how futuristic it was for this to be put in. I'm not in any way decrying the efforts of anybody, but to achieve 17,000 by 2050, we need to put in 2 every day, including weekends, right through to 2050. And the cost of that will be about, just of putting them there, not maintaining them, will be about £1.5 million a year that we have to find from somewhere to do them. And Scottish Power, and with respect to the government, and I agree with what you say, it doesn't matter what colour the government is, 400 million is a lovely sum to spend on beginning to put in charge points, but Scottish Power say that to put in the necessary charge points are going to be 48.5 billion pounds. Scale. I'm running out of time, but I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to just going to pause it. I have 2 minutes left, but I've paused. The other thing I've got to talk about is that mainly because of you, sir, I went to try and buy an electric car. Now, sort of, what's happening is that the government is dumping and has given... after that, I was furious at the last one, because I walked out about how wonderful hybrids were and how I was going to buy a hybrid, and I read the newspaper, and sort of 2 days earlier, the government had dumped its grant for hybrids. Well, that was the end of that. And sort of but nevertheless, I thought I shall buy an electric vehicle. So my son's very hot on this, and so he said, "Yeah, check out the Hyundai, Dad. Check out this." And I've mentioned the name. I wasn't going to mention the name. Just strike that from your mind. But I went to try and buy a car, and I rang up the dealership, and they said, "Oh, we have a number of garages, but we only have one demonstration vehicle, and we pass it round from garage to garage." So I said, "Well, which one is it?" So I said, they said it's Middlesbrough. I wasn't going to mention that either. And so I went down to Middlesbrough to check it out, and we went and we stood we made an appointment. We stood in the showroom, and we were ignored for a long time. Then eventually somebody wandered over, and he says, "Oh, it's outside," and he took it out, and he says, "There it is." So I said, "Can we have a demonstration? Can we take it? Can I do a drive?" No, we don't do drives. "Oh, well, can I have a demonstration?" No, I can't. I'm not allowed to drive it. So I said, "Are we allowed to sit in it?" "Oh," he says, and he went and he got the keys, and he opened it, and he said this to me. He said, "You're not going to be able to buy this from a garage soon," he says. "You're going to buy it online." And I don't know whether he was making it up or not, but so you have to buy it online, you have to pay up front, and they'll bring it to you and deliver it, and then you'll have 14 days to decide whether you like it or not and send it back. He says, "I'm not right happy with these," he says, "because that's going to do me out of a job." He says, "I don't like these." So I thought, well, if you can't be bothered to sell it to me, I certainly can't be bothered to buy it. And so I went, and on the way home, I dropped in, and I'm going to mention the garage again, the Nissan. I said to Barbara, "We'll go and have a look at a Leaf." And then, "Okay, we're going to have a look at the Leaf." So I dropped in, I said, is it again, the long wait, is there a Leaf I can see? And the guy comes over, he says, "Oh, no, we only have one demonstration vehicle in the dealership, the huge dealership." He says, and actually, one of our workers his car's broken down, so he's borrowed it and he's taken it home. So there wasn't a vehicle for me to see. And he says, oh, and by the way, to tell you the truth, he says, most of these are going abroad. And he says, I can't, if you were to buy one from me, I can't guarantee when you'll get it. Maybe 3 months, maybe 9 months. We are working here against an inertia and a lack of scale which needs a bomb putting under it, doesn't it? Do you not think, and again, I know the last thing you chose to do when you come up here. I loved your talk, by the way. Thank you so much. But if you're telling me that green number plates are going to change those kind of attitudes, if they're going to change the fact that it costs £35,000 to buy one, I can't afford that, really, if truth be told. I'm retired. My savings have got to last me till I die. And if you buy a Renault Zoe, it's £20,000, but then you have to pay £100 a month to rent your battery. So what I can buy a second-hand car for £100 a month, and I have to stomp up £20,000 up front and then pay that to rent the back. And there's so many problems with price. Range is an issue. Charging points is an issue. They're just not there. They worry about it. The announcement that they're going to we need to do more, and with respect, I know it's not your fault, but I want you to take the message back to the government. Much, much more needs to happen. We need to get urgent about this. And it reminds me, I'm going to start the clock now. And it reminds me of the Second World War, because if you believe the Extinction Rebellion people, we really are in a struggle to survive. We really are in a situation where we are wrecking our environment and our climate, and when Britain was previously in a struggle to survive, Winston Churchill said, "Give us the tools, and we will finish the job." And surely that's a situation like this now. And there is a personal responsibility here, but there is a responsibility on government at every level to provide to provide. And you talked a lot about the fact that this is going to be commercially delivered, but we have to provide the environment and the context in which it's worthwhile, these people and these men selling the cars, to actually do so. And that's going to involve three things. It's going to involve money, shed loads of it. It's going to involve a regulatory framework which forces change, and then it's going to involve enforcement to make sure that that happens and to bring it about. I had this talk, and it was very, very good, but I never really thought out how I was going to end it. So, so I'm just going to finish. Thank you very much.